Well, there are big nights of news, and then there are big nights of news. Last night was a doozy. Nicholas Sandmann is going to get his pound of flesh from CNN. And finally, a robot that has emotions? All that's coming up right now on I'm Right. Well, people, you may think that you've had bad nights before, and I'm sure some of you have, but you have not had a night most likely that's quite as bad as Iran's was last night. Let us go over things from the very, very beginning. First of all, we've all seen the coverage for the past few days. Iran's having 3-day funerals for Soleimani, and they're raising up the red flag of vengeance, and they're going all over TV. Of course, CNN telling everybody we're gonna get back at America. We're going to have our revenge, severe revenge. And so what does Iran do? Well, they rally up 15 cruise missiles and fire them at American bases in Iraq, killing exactly nobody, no Americans. Oh, but the night actually got worse from there, ladies and gentlemen. That was just the first. Then Iran has not one, but 2 major earthquakes happening in their country right now. By the way, if any of my contacts out there happen to know if we have an earthquake-causing machine, I promise I will keep that secret. Give me a call. Let me know. Oh, but it's not done, ladies and gentlemen. Iran then apparently shot down their own plane, a passenger plane. It was Ukrainian Airlines taking off from Tehran. We don't know what happened. Nobody knows what happened because Iran won't let anybody have the black box that would have the communication from the cockpit. A passenger plane with 180 people on it took off from Tehran and landed a short time later in a massive ball of fire. People, that is not from the movies. That all happened last night. So if I happen to yawn at some point in time during the show, that's because I was up all night watching the news to make sure I'm bringing you expert opinions. Now, first of all, on the passenger plane, if I can go full tinfoil on my head for just a moment, you ready for this? I have a theory. And you're not going to hear this anywhere else. It's just a theory. I think Iran shot down that plane on purpose. Now, the prevailing thinking out there is, I should say, the plane took off late. Iran was obviously on high alert for any retaliation from us. So they were going to be shooting down anything they didn't recognize in the sky. They didn't know that plane was going to take off. They saw a plane in the sky. Uh-oh, somebody shoot it. Beep. Oh, whoops. That was Delta. So that's very likely what happened. But my theory is this. I think Iran planned on shooting down that passenger plane, and this is why. What's everybody talking about today, or at least it's what everyone was talking about before Trump gave his press conference, which we'll get to in a moment. But everybody today is talking about the plane that was shot down. They're not talking about the fact that Iran's severe revenge was 15 cruise missiles, 4 of which ended up landing on the ground like my son throwing rocks in the backyard. And they didn't hurt anybody. They didn't do anything. Now, granted, I predicted all this. I believe it was yesterday's show I predicted all this. Iran has 2% of our military budget. Iran, their economy is in shambles. And ladies and gentlemen, we don't like to think of things like this, but this is the truth. Economies, money, it's what runs militaries. You know why we have all those fancy jets and aircraft carriers and submarines and fancy weapons and night vision goggles? You know why we have those? Because the economy back home pays for those. Well, picture this. You're Iran. You already only have 2% of our military budget, and we're destroying your economy with sanctions. They don't have the money for good military equipment. They don't have the personnel. Iran doesn't have the ability to seriously hurt America in a conventional way. Now, they can use one of their terror groups, and they may still do that at some point in time. Have some psycho walk onto an American base or something with a suicide vest on. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But beyond that, Iran doesn't have the ability to hurt us in a significant way. On top of that, we have the ability to destroy them. They're not just the country we could crush with our military. Our military is already staged and prepared to do so. So what did Iran do? Well, you have your 3 days of funerals. You tell your people, we're going to be the swift sword of revenge. you fire some missiles, and you walk away. They're lying to their people already. They're already saying they killed some people. We'll get to that in a moment. But they're going to walk away. They're already putting out statements. Hey, we're done now. As long as you're good, America, we're good. Hey, you're not going to attack anymore, right? All right, we won't attack you then. We're fine then. That is what you call giving up, people. Giving up. It was a good day and a good win for us. President Trump was unusually reserved last night, unusually quiet as all this news was pouring in. He said, all is well, troops are fine, we'll talk in the morning. Well, he did talk this morning, and this is the first part of his statement.
I'm pleased to inform you the American people should be extremely grateful and happy. No Americans were harmed in last night's attack by the Iranian regime. We suffered no casualties. All of our soldiers are safe, and only minimal damage was sustained at our military bases. Our great American forces are prepared for anything. Iran appears to be standing down, which is a good thing for all parties concerned and a very good thing for the world.
Okay, if we could be very serious for a moment, that really is wonderful. It's not just wonderful about the troops last night that our guys were all safe. It's wonderful for the world itself. Yes, we would mop the floor with Iran, but is that really a great thing in the long run? If their Ayatollah drags their poor people kicking and screaming into a war with the greatest military power the world has ever seen, so we can slaughter 500,000 Iranians before we call it a day, it really is a good thing. And you know what? Much as I hate to even say it, I'm glad Iran did the smart thing last night. They could have dropped one of those cruise missiles on our embassy. They could have done something really horrific to women and children. Iran's certainly not above using terror. They have all over the world. They chose not to. It looks like Trump is letting it go, so that's a good thing. But Trump is still out there putting Iran on notice because, let's be honest, they may have made a smart decision last night, but in the end, they're still Iran.
For far too long, all the way back to 1979 to be exact, nations have tolerated Iran's destructive and destabilizing behavior in the Middle East and beyond. Those days are over. Iran has been the leading sponsor of terrorism, and their pursuit of nuclear weapons threatens the civilized world. We will never let that happen.
Good for him. And I'll tell you something else. Do you know part of the reason why Iran chose to wisen up last night? Let me explain to you how those decisions get made. The Ayatollah and all his generals, they get in a room and they start to decide, well, what can we do to America? Oh, we could bomb this. Missiles here, well, we could do that. Oh, we could kill a lot of people here. And then they all start thinking. They may not say it, but they're all thinking, what if he kills me? You see, when you kill somebody like Soleimani, you are doing exactly what Trump just said right there. You're making sure they know this is not going to be tolerated anymore. The United States of America for years has done this thing where we have these high-ranking government people. Well, we can't touch him. That's too much of an escalation. It's too high up. When you kill somebody like Soleimani, you're telling the rest of the leadership in Iran, buddy, that might be your car that is melted in the middle of the road next time. So be careful about the decisions you make. And if you think that didn't play into their thinking, you're crazy. It absolutely did. Trump went on.
As we continue to evaluate options in response to Iranian aggression, the United States will immediately impose additional punishing economic sanctions on the Iranian regime. These powerful sanctions will remain until Iran changes its behavior.
Now, Donald Trump is clearly not taking his foot off the gas, and he shouldn't take his foot off the gas. Iran would love nothing more than for last night to be the end of it, and, well, okay, lift the sanctions now. We're all getting along, right? We're all friends? No, we're not friends. Iran is still Iran. They're still an imperialist, terrorist-producing nation. They need to stop that. I hope cooler heads prevail at some point. And you know what's funny? Donald Trump even said, I'm not going to play it for you. We seek peace with everybody. If Iran would change its tune, would change its policy, with their oil producing ability and their location in the world, We could be rolling in the dough. Wisen up, idiots. Make some money. Enjoy some freedom. Look how we do it. It's better than the way you do it. Well, look, I'd love to say it was all good news last night, and the tangible thing, well, it's obviously not all good news last night because 180 freaking people were dead on a passenger plane. But as far as for America goes, I'd like to say it was all good news, but it wasn't, because once again, we appear to have a Democrat media alliance that is rooting against America. They're saying fake news. They're rooting for Iran. They're sympathetic to Soleimani. Here's MSNBC talking about dead American troops on something that's blatantly not true.
We're just getting reports now that a second wave of rocket attacks have been launched from Iran. The IRGC was saying that Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader of this country, was in the control center coordinating these attacks. This bit I'm not sure about, but the Iran state media is claiming that 30 U.S. soldiers have been killed in this attack. Now, this is not confirmed. This is just coming from Iranian media. But we have just stepped over the precipice, Chris. We have entered a very unpredictable time. We have to see what the response is going to be from the United States.
Well, it's sad that they're echoing the Iranian state media, but nevertheless, it pretty much is verbatim what Iranian state media said. They told their people last night, breaking. Iranian television says 80 American soldiers were killed in strikes on the base in Iraq, despite the United States saying there were no American casualties. Well, I guess that's the advantage, if you want to call it that, of having a state-run media. You can just blatantly lie to everyone in your country, shut off the internet, and hope people actually believe that. But while all this was going on, missiles firing into our bases, passenger planes going down, earthquakes, searching for casualties, what's NBC doing? Well, they tweeted out a link so you could watch Qasem Soleimani's funeral. I'm not making that up, ladies and gentlemen. On my life, that's not a Photoshop. While America was potentially going to war last night, the American media was letting you know you can mourn right along with the Iranians for that sweet, sweet soul, Soleimani. How in the world did we get here? Coming up, we have co-author of the book 13 Hours, a man who was at Benghazi during that whole disaster. Hang on, you're going to want to hear this. Well, it's always a good day when we can have a veteran here on the show. You know, we speak a bit of a different language, so allow me to welcome in Mark Geist, veteran of the Benghazi attack. Maybe you heard about that, and co-author of the book 13 Hours. Mark, first of all, before we get into all the other stuff and the insane night in Iran and Iraq last night, what went through Mark's head when Soleimani got turned into a can of SpaghettiOs?
Not a whole lot of things bring so much pleasure to me than when a bad guy that's killed that has a lot of blood of American heroes on his hands gets squashed like a June bug.
It is a good night. I immediately had a buddy of mine who lost a couple limbs over there in Iraq send me a picture of his limbs and said, "Man, I'm drinking one tonight. I'm a happy man." So that is a good night. All right. Now, what happened last night? I kind of assumed this is what was going to happen. Iran shoots a couple missiles, 15 to be exact, 4 fall flat because, let's be honest, it's Iran and their stuff's a pile of crap. Do you think they missed on purpose? How do you think this all shook down within Iran? They had to do something. They did a little. What'd they do?
You know, you're right. They had to do something. And to be honest, I didn't think that they would be firing some ballistic missiles. I thought they would react more through some of their surrogates. But with the amount of support and the number of people that showed up on the streets for Soleimani's funeral, they had to do something. And like you said, I mean, you wonder if they missed on purpose or, you know, their stuff is just... it's like Legos. Sometimes it just falls apart.
All right, my only issue with that, because that is what I believe they tried to do something and tried to not hurt our people, but when you're facing off against the most powerful military in the world, you're Iran, you're dead broke, your military's kind of crappy and it's definitely falling apart, you're not supplied well, That's quite a risk to take to just start lobbing ballistic missiles into an airbase where we have U.S. service members. I mean, you can say we were trying to miss them. Some guy's out having a smoke late at night, and you smoke him, you're in deep trouble.
Yeah, yeah, and since the President Trump took us out of the Iran nuclear deal and imposed those sanctions back on Iran, their economy has been just steadily going downhill. Their tax base is down like 30% this year, which is billions and billions of dollars. They're struggling in Lebanon. They're struggling in Yemen. Both those countries, their economies are just tanking as well. And that's because they're being backed by the Quds Force and the IRCG, the IRGC. And like you said, I mean, it would have took us to launch 1 or 2 cruise missiles and hit any one of their refineries and take them out of the oil making business as well.
I was about to be my next question. We do have the ability to do that, right? I mean, I know we have the naval force over there. Obviously, we have the troops in Iraq. We do have the capability, for lack of a better way to put it, with the push of a button to severely, severely vaporize parts of their economy, correct?
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. And really just the threat of that is hurting their economy. I mean, I was reading some stuff from I think he's the second vice chair of the Chamber of Commerce. His name's Masoud Kassani. And he's stating that, there's between 10 to 50 businesses, large businesses leaving Iran every month. And, again, it just hits their tax base. They're not making money. And that's just because of the threat. Who wants to go work? Who wants to start a new business in Iran, understanding that we may be blowing them up sometime soon?
Mark, what has been your thinking, whether you loved it or hated, what has been your thinking about how President Trump has handled this whole thing? From the decision to take out Soleimani, which is not a small decision, to coming out today saying, hey, we're going to put in some new sanctions, but he essentially washed his hands of it. However, what's going through your head? You're somebody who's obviously been on a pretty raw end of a horrible foreign policy deal. What's your decision? What's your thinking about President Trump?
Well, I wish he would have been in office when I was on a rooftop in Benghazi facing off with 100 or so angry Islamist fanatical militias that I know that, probably 2 of my friends would still be alive if that would have been the case, because we'd have had the support we needed. Sometimes being the guy that's in charge, heavy is the head that wears the crown. But you can delegate your authority, but you can't delegate your responsibility. And I think he acted both with the embassy, with the taking out of Soleimani, with precision and well thought out strategic outlook on how this may come. A lot of people think that he was off the hook on it, but I don't think he had done anything without thinking it through first.
Mark, where do you stand on foreign policy in general? I mean, I've become a lot more non-interventionist than I used to be. Obviously, I still enjoy it when I find out somebody like Soleimani gets turned into dust. But for the most part, we're in Iraq for 2 decades. We're in Afghanistan for 2 decades. Iraq hates us now. They're voting to kick us out. And they've never liked us in Afghanistan. I'm sick of morons putting our best people in harm's way. Where do you fall on all that?
Well, I'm right there with you. Both of us have probably seen too many of our friends get injured or killed, or too many of our brothers and sisters in our military service get injured or killed overseas in the last, 10 years, 15 years. What are we going on, 20 years now? But, at the same time, you can't appease everybody with an olive leaf, with a fig branch. You can't just say, okay, here, I promise, if you do this, we'll give you this, or we're going to give you $1 billion as long as you don't do that. As well as I do, the only way those in the Middle East and those that are in these totalitarian, autocratic countries, those leaders know power. They respect power. They respect strength. And you got to have that, at least the threat of that, and them knowing how President Trump is, or wondering how he is. And I guess Soleimani figured it out real quick. They know now what he'll do and what he won't do. It's kind of the whole carrot and stick thing.
Yes, and good for him. Mark, cannot thank you enough for what you've done. Loved 13 hours, by the way. Come back soon. You hear me?
Hey, definitely. Semper Fi, brother.
Semper Fi, my brother. Hoorah. Well, Nicholas Sandmann is apparently going to bathe in $100 bills for the rest of his life. I'll tell you why that's actually a win for America. Hang on. Well, the Nicholas Sandmann saga needs no introduction from me. No, I'm not going to recap the whole story. You remember he was a high school kid, goes to a Trump rally in Washington, D.C. with his MAGA hat on, standing there with this group of friends. Some dude with some Indian drums walks up to him. He was just standing there and starts pounding the drums in his face. And, of course, they lionized the Indian dude as some Vietnam veteran, even though the guy did refrigerator repair in Oklahoma or something and went AWOL a whole bunch. He never went to Vietnam, but either that. Be that as it may, the press weaponized itself in a way that I've rarely seen before. I won't say never seen before, but in a way that I've rarely seen before. We've all seen the personal destruction of people who get involved in politics in some way. Clarence Thomas, Brett Kavanaugh, we've all seen these things. But the media, like I've never seen, off of a picture or a little mini video, only showing the video of the Indian dude in Nicholas Sandmann's face, decided this guy was bullying the old guy. That's a white guy oppressing an Indian. That's a Trump supporter oppressing a liberal. Look at this smug look on this jerk's face. And without a second thought, without maybe confirming things, they went both barrels after Nick Sandmann. Remember this tweet from Bakari Sellers, CNN analyst. Quote, he is deplorable. Some people can also be punched in the face. Former CNN contributor Reza Aslan said, quote, honest question, have you ever seen a more punchable face than this kid's? Former CNN contributor Kathy Griffin said, quote, name these kids. I want names. Shame them. If you, these blankers, wouldn't dox you in a heartbeat, think again. It went on, and it went on, and it went on. I'm not just pointing at CNN, by the way. Washington Post, there were so many bad actors running to Twitter to get it out there in time. Oh, well, let's blast this kid. Screw him. And it was all fake. And it turned out the kid got death threats. They had to shut down their school for a couple days, destroyed his reputation, and apparently Nick Sandmann is going to get his pound of flesh now, ladies and gentlemen. CNN just settled for an undisclosed amount with Nick Sandmann. He was suing CNN for $250 million. Now, why would CNN settle? All we can do is guess on this. Could it be that maybe CNN didn't want to go through the discovery process? Discovery meaning, hey, turn over all your emails, turn over all your texts. Can you imagine what they were saying to each other as they were having a blast, pouncing on a high school kid with bad information? You remember this tweet from Donald Trump. Quote, the Washington Post ignored basic journalistic standards because it wanted to advance its well-known and easily documented biased agenda against President Donald J. Trump. Covenant student suing WAPO. Go get him, Nick. Fake news. See, Donald Trump egged him on, and Nicholas Sandmann apparently got an attorney who's a bulldog, and it's my understanding he is going after WAPO. He's going after a lot more people. Now, this is not necessarily about the Sandmann case. Is this the way we are going forward? Is this the path forward? Are people going to start turning the barrels back around and aiming them, obviously just figuratively, at the American media? Are they? You see, the American media is in a unique situation. The press has always had access to the public. They've always had the ability to speak to this guy or that guy, but it used to just be, just on the radio. You gather around the radio with Ma and Pa and your chocolate Ovaltine. Or then it got to TV. Newspapers, but these are small outlets. These can only get you for a small amount of time. We are now in the year 2020, and ladies and gentlemen, I have 150,000 Twitter followers. In one tweet, I can name somebody, shame somebody, and destroy somebody's reputation. And yes, while that's fun because I obviously only use it for immature laughs, that comes with a responsibility, doesn't it? Doesn't the media have new responsibilities now that they've never had before? I mean, surely they're not holding themselves to the same rules they used to hold themselves to when it was the Sunday morning paper. You need to exercise more restraint if you're in the American media today, because not only is it easier for you to reach a lot of people in a very short amount of time, it's also easy for your colleagues to join you and push all the same message because, oh, it's exciting. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at that Facebook post. Oh, send this one out on Instagram. Sooner or later, you've destroyed somebody. And what if it's wrong? What if it's wrong? It has become a powerful, powerful weapon. And until now, I haven't really seen the public take any steps to come back at them. I think this is a wonderful thing. No, I don't think every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there should sue the media every time there's a story that they don't like. But if the media is going to engage in the politics of personal destruction, not just for politicians, but regular everyday citizens, then you get what you get. Don't throw a fit. Start writing big, big checks out there, and maybe they'll see things just a little bit differently. You know that new Richard Jewell movie that came out? Clint Eastwood just put out that new Richard Jewell movie. Don't you think maybe they would have liked the option to get a little bit more than they ended up getting out of that whole thing? You see, they took a hero and they wrecked his life. And almost nobody in the world was held accountable for it. And Richard Jewell, he died, and he died without getting an ounce of justice, and that's not right. If you were the American media, it is time to wake up and realize that you have a new level of responsibility that you have never had before. It's time to be smarter. It's time to be less of a liberal activist. It's time to be more mature, and I know that's coming from me as actually saying something, but it is. It's time to grow up and realize that you don't have to say anything. You don't have to tweet everything that comes into your head. You don't have to see a picture or a video and think, ooh, this is a good chance to get Trump. Screw him. Be more responsible. All of us need to be more responsible. Actually, I take that back. All of you need to be more responsible. I'm very responsible. All right. We're going to talk to Eddie Scary about this. Hang on. Joining me now to talk about all this media mess, Eddie Scary, author and columnist with the Washington Examiner. Eddie, Nicholas Sandmann apparently got his pound of flesh with CNN. We don't know how much. I'm assuming it's a lot. There's certainly not going to be the last one. But my question is not so much about him, but is this now the new norm? Are people going to start going after the media when they go after them?
Well, it's interesting because winning a libel suit against particularly a national news outlet is very difficult. The bar is really, really high. So I was somewhat surprised to see CNN settle, or anyone else for that matter. But if anyone had a case to make, it was Nick Sandmann, it was the Covington Catholic kids, because the things that were said about them and the rush to portray this story as the white male privileged kids against this minority American Indian, who was the victim in the way it was first told, was completely not true. And there was a rush, and the analysis that we saw all over the TV, CNN, the analysis that we saw in some of the newspapers was completely off mark. And it doesn't look like they were very careful about making sure that the story was what they originally said it was. So there was a pretty strong case there. And if that means people are more successful going forward, when they are portrayed in ways that are not true, when they are painted in a false light, when they are libeled, that's a good thing.
Is it a good thing? And I ask that for this reason. Look, nobody hates the American media more than me. I do. I despise them. But I understand the American press's freedom is a valuable freedom we have in this country. Is it really a good thing going forward? You're in the media. I'm in the media, although a lot less professional than you are. I mean, do we want people to be able to just go after them for nothing?
Well, there does need to be a recourse. That's a good thing. But I think that the more ideal outcome of this is that we don't have another situation where just because you see a viral clip online, you suddenly decide, Oh, that's exactly what we're looking for. The privileged white males attacking this this victim simply because they're a minority. I talk about this at great length in my upcoming book. It's out next month, Privileged Victims: How America's Culture Fascists Hijacked the Country and Elevated Its Worst People. There's an entire segment about exactly this happening. They saw the different journalists, producers, TV bookers saw what was going on in a very short clip online, and they just assumed that this is what's going on. The privileged white males belittling or attacking this poor minority. We saw that that wasn't the case, but hopefully that was a lesson for the media going forward, and we won't see any more of that.
Eddie, how does this happen this badly in this case? Because look, he's one of a million cases. I mean, my goodness, CNN sent a news crew to some poor little old lady's front lawn over a Facebook post at some point in time. But how does it happen this bad on this level? Yes, I know the press is left. That's not exactly news to anybody else out there. Are they texting each other? You know, hey, we got to destroy this kid. Do they just want to get a good tweet out there? Do they want to be first? Is there no editor out there anymore to say, whoa, let's hold up on this? How does it happen to this level where a 17-year-old kid gets destroyed for something totally false?
Well, first, it is just the nature of the media that they thought it was an easy story. I think this happened on a weekend, so that they're looking for things to do. That's number one. But number two is, again, it's all in my book. This is a social justice issue. The social justice stuff is what tickles the media now. It runs the media now. And again, they see a story that they thought this fits the narrative that we're constantly telling day in and day out, compounded by the way that these kids were wearing the MAGA hats. I think that it's possible that this wouldn't have even been a story if they hadn't been wearing the MAGA hats. But again, it reinforced the narrative of privilege versus victimhood, and the privileged are always supposed to be the white straight male. It's never the minority. And yet the delicious irony of this was that it was the media victimizing these kids. The victims in this whole story were actually the kids in this case, and it was the media and all of their chase to tell this story. They were the perpetrators.
I'm not sure I believe this, but hear me out on this. I'm just spitballing a theory to you. We have the freedom of the press in America, and I already said it's a great freedom to have. But can I argue, or what if I wanted to make the argument, that we had the freedom of the press when we had printing presses out there, copiers out there? That's the same thing as saying, and now we have the media all over the place. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everything's instant. Everything's right away. You can destroy somebody's life. I have 150,000 followers on Twitter. I can destroy somebody in one tweet in 5 seconds. Should there be new laws? Should there be something more to keep these things reined in? It's essentially, you've got a small child sitting there and, well, we trusted him with a penknife. We might as well trust him with a grenade.
Well, you would think that a certain responsibility on behalf of the press would kick in, particularly when it comes to a case like this, when you are talking about high school children, effectively. Will there be new laws? Like I said, again, from the beginning, is that I was a little bit surprised to see this case go anywhere at all, though they did have a very strong case, the Sandmann family and the Covington Catholic kids. They had as good a case as you could probably have, and yet the courts tend to be very reluctant to do anything when it comes to speech, and that includes the press. It's the First Amendment for a reason. It's number one for a reason. So I don't see any new laws happening. I know that's kind of the downside of freedom, but at the same time, again, it's a good thing that we have a recourse.
Tell me about cultural fascism. I want to get into your book here just briefly. What is cultural fascism? What are you talking about?
So when I talk about the culture fascist, more accurately, is we have, again, it's this social justice ideology that's now infecting every part of our lives. The culture fascists are the ones who are reinforcing that over and over again, reinforcing that narrative. And that includes the news media, as is this case right here. And this is why the Covington controversy is in my book. But it's also Hollywood. It's also establishment Washington, first and foremost, probably more than any other culture fascist or cultural area that's been corrupted, is the colleges. It's academia, because this is where it all starts. This is kind of where it began, and it spreads throughout the country in these other areas. But they're the ones constantly pushing the social justice narrative, that there's the privileged and then there's the victims. And it's all centered on the victim. It depends on what's their race, what's their gender, what's their sexuality. But the ultimate person of privilege is always assumed to be the straight, white, or rather heterosexual white male, and then you have the different levels of victimhood after that. But that's what I talk about when I say the culture fascist. It includes the media, and the Covington controversy really crystallized that issue.
Isn't that a self-defeating ideology, though? Because they've become, honestly, the worst little tyrants in the world, these social justice warriors. I mean, they managed to somehow throw out Ricky Gervais and make him some kind of conservative icon when all the guy does is make fun of conservatives. Aren't they destroying themselves in the long run, or are they producing 4 million new college graduates a year and they're going to be just fine and we're in trouble?
I think that the latter is what's looking like what's happening. I think there was a real turning point, particularly with the Brett Kavanaugh nomination. That's another chapter in my book, because the Me Too movement is a lot to do with this social justice stuff. It's another one that really crystallized what's happened. But it turns out if you fight against this, if you're willing to fight and not just to automatically assume that this is the way things have to be, that was a turning point that we saw. And again, like, you have people who become suddenly very popular. Dave Chappelle's Netflix special, because it was all attacking this whole culture of the social justice ideology, the whole culture around the privilege and victimhood. One of the most popular specials of the year last year. And so there is a way to fight it. Again, though, I would say that social justice is winning the battle at the moment, but there is still hope.
Are we creating a new kind of politician on the right? Or should I say, are they creating the need for a new kind of politician on the right? I mean, you can say everyone, has their love and hate for Donald Trump. He's a brute, he's brash. What if I were to say, I think he's tame compared to the meat-eating super assassin we're going to have one of these days? If the left continues to be this vicious, we're going to pick our own junkyard dog.
Right, and I think that's what the election of Donald Trump, in large part, I mean, there are many reasons why Trump was elected, but this was certainly a big motivator for a lot of voters. They said, I am so tired of having this forced down my throat, being suffocated and told what I can say and what I can think, where I can say it, and when is the next word being banned from vocabulary. When's the next time you can't feel a certain way about something? And then suddenly this person comes along and says, it doesn't have to be that way. You can actually fight this disease that's corrupting all of the country. But again, we have one guy right now. Yes, I think he's motivated a lot of people. He's inspired a lot of people. But we still have one guy. It's Donald Trump. There are some others out there that are really fighting it, and they're doing a great job. But as of right now, yes, we're seeing the one guy. Hopefully there's more. We'll see.
Eddie Scarry, author and columnist with the Washington Examiner. Plug that book again real quick. I want to read this.
Yeah, it's out February 25th. I hope you'll have me on again when it's out. Privileged Victims, How America's Culture Fascists Hijacked the Country and Elevated Its Worst People. It's on Amazon for pre-order right now, but it comes out February 25th.
Count on being back. We will absolutely have you back on. Eddie, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Well, apparently we're creating robots that feel? Hang on, I'll explain. I try not to be the resident old person, even though I'm only 38 years old, but I have to tell you, people, I don't understand so many things that happen in this day and age. I don't understand men that want to turn themselves into women. I don't understand cheeseburgers that are only made out of plants. And I don't understand this new human fascination with creating these robots, with creating these personal assistants. Are we that lonely out there? I mean, you guys know there are actual real women you can go talk to, right? And yes, they spend all your money. And yes, they talk a lot, but they smell nice. And they're a lot better than this robot thing. Samsung is putting out robots now that apparently will show emotion. Buddy, show emotion? Look, if you're going to go the robot route, isn't that what you don't want? So let me see if I understand this right. This is the marketing for it. You can go spend a fortune on this thing, and then it'll just start crying randomly. How is that any different than a real woman? Come on now. We'll be back to have some more fun tomorrow. See you then.